Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to of course, thank you all. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Expon organization, all the colleagues, assistants, participants. And when we were thinking about this presentation, and the word landscape came so often in so different contexts, well, we thought, why not to discuss a little bit what is landscape for a landscape architect? So this will be more or less the way to go in my this short presentation. So for us landscape architects, we tend to see landscape not because of a big size area. It might be, but it's not very dependable on size on the first place. And sure, it's not depend only on being a very nice place. So scenery, which is often mentioned as such a beautiful landscape. For us landscapes, yes, aesthetic has a value in it, but there are other other important factors to define what is a landscape. And one thing that most of the times is not characteristic of a landscape is the land use of that landscape. So for us, and I have here a quote from an historian, Simon Chama, we tend to look at it as a very complex entity where human factors and non-human factors work together through time to create a very interesting, dynamic entity where we are parts of it. Nuno just, for instance, mentioned a very important factor about the property of the forest in Portugal, and that has a huge impact, as Nuno mentioned, on the, let's say, on the land use of the things. But we tend to look at this aggregate entity of human, and by human we say social, economical, political value issues, and non-human. So for us, as a fundamental concept, it's interesting to understand that landscape, it's not the land, or landscape is not territory. We tend to look at the land like the place that we use, and the territory, the place that is ours. So it's more linked with property limits. So it's interesting, and I think it's very inspiring to see the change of the terminology from territorial planning to landscape planning. I think that is a huge conceptual approach that in Portugal, in other parts of the world, we are moving on. And is this considering that the things are much more complex than we, well, some time ago used to say that we can manage only the territory, and then in fact we have to manage the landscape. So it's very interesting. So a short definition, the definition that is now, let's say, official by the European Landscape Convention, is that landscape is an area as perceived by people. So it's a point of view also that people understanding what they are looking at. A famous, unfortunately not with us anymore, ecologist from Spain that I had the opportunity to learn with, González Bernales, and I compliment with him my Spanish colleagues. I used to say that landscape is the information that we receive from the exterior places. So it's something that we need to understand and organize in our minds to have the perception of what we are seeing. But I highlight here the point, I think, which is the most important point in this European Landscape Convention, which is character. So the character, what is the character of a landscape? And the results of the action and interaction of natural and human factors, the thing that we've been spoken about. So character for us is a very strong word that make us go through what is this. So is character beauty? like nice landscape. When we took a photo, we try to find the best place to take a photo. Is that only that? We think that the eye is not enough, because landscape is not only what we see. It's that global situation of what we see and the things that we don't see, but that together create what we see. So in a world, as we know, everything is connected to everything. How can we discover what is the character, what is different from place to place? So we try to kind of search, like we do, let's say, in people, that character is the identity. Something that allows me to say, I'm in this landscape or I'm in that landscape. And that, again, is a little bit different from the land use. Land use can be one thing today, some other thing the other day, if we are in a more annual rotation crop system. But that landscape could be, for instance, a plain, a huge plain, or kind of a steep landscape. So it's the identity. And that identity is, of course, in function of the scale of perception and the common features selected. For instance, we are one entity, like each of us is one person, but we are all now in a Aspen identity, and we are in, let's say, in a virtual conference identity, and we are all human. So it depends on the scale, depends on the identity that we understand and that we work with this concept of landscape. It's very interesting that in Portugal, some more or less 20 years ago, a group of landscape architects and geographers from the university where Ana and myself, we are products of, University of Évora, make this, I would say, marvelous, wonderful work to map and describe the landscape units in continental Portugal. And it's amazing that in such a more or less not so big country, we have 100, we add, it was in this date is from the year more or less 2000, we had 128 landscape units. On this context, we had 128 different spaces, areas, different characters, different cultures, different some points that could say that we are in a unit different from the other unit. And with these common features, of course, comes different management options. That is a little bit, again, different from the land use only approach. I'd love, and I hope that the DGT, the Directorate General of Territory, maybe in the next 5 years or 10 years, if we'll do this again, what will happen? What will happen? Are we keeping our diversity, or are we losing it, or maintaining at least? So we try to look at these landscape units and see their global functions. Aesthetics, of course, but also functional, cultural, heritage, economic, the narrative, and ecological aspects. For instance, in terms of, let's say, cultural or heritage, in terms of landscape, we sometimes say, if we add a wall in the road, or in the front of a nature of a national monument, and that monument is, for instance, a monastery, then if we need stone, we could just break some parts of that monastery and put that shredded stone to fill the hole in the street. Of course, no one thinks about this. No one thinks about doing this. But at the same time, when we are working on the landscape and we don't understand or you don't recognize what are also the cultural and heritage elements of it, we do more or less the same thing. So we look at landscapes sometimes just as a resource, just as land, and not on all of these issues. Again, I'm I'm doing this approach, and the concept is what is landscape for landscape architect. Okay, so I don't pretend this to be universal truths. Okay, this is for what is a landscape architect when works with landscape things. So for us, the KPIs for sustainable landscapes, of course, they are basic, the thing that we need to be sustainable, to live forever: fresh air, drinkable water, sufficient food, clean energy, and the cycle of matter. And also from a human point of view, the shelters, the social interaction, the production of goods and services, and the preservation of memory, and the fair share in peace. More and more, a good management of landscape is internationally, and in border conflicts and immigration situations and climate change situation, is a very important approach to democracy and peace. Again, as Nuno said, and that's very important, most of our landscapes, most of our place that we work, in Portugal and most of Europe, it's man-made, humanized. So if we want to say these 128 landscape units are important, if we want to keep their character, if we can capitalize on that character in order to provide good sense of community, but also economy and the form of tourism or whatever, then if we want to put value in this dimension of landscape, I think that we need to create mechanisms to assure their character and like that human interaction between, let's say, nature and culture.
George, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Anna. But we are concerned. These two graphs show our landscapes being humanized. We see that that green line on the left graph is descending abruptly. So it's number of people in agriculture, in forestry. And then because of that also pyramid, we see that we are losing people. So less and less and less people on the fields, people working on these humanized landscapes. So what can we do? We know that landscapes must be designed, managed, evaluated, scientifically planned. We have the means for that. I presented here, which is a classic, as probably all of you know, the Design with Nature by Mian Makar. That is, for instance, one of the fundamentals of GIS that is now so important in all of our work. We must understand, I think that we must gain that, let's say, landscape culture in order to, if we are going to work in landscape plans, I think it's interesting to create a common language of what landscape is. But we need also to understand that it's not only changing the land use again, we need to understand the changing situation of its actors. We are losing people, the perceptions. More and more the world is urban, and so the perceptions of the rural world is changing, the functions and the ecosystem services, and basically to understand its character. So for us, it is fundamental that the more diversified a landscape is, or let's say the more close to the character that allow us to distinguish one unity of landscape to another, the more its sustainability. And so I think, we think that it's a fundamental, it's an imperative issue in today's world to assure that we have intergenerational justice and that we allow systems that can hold life for the next generations. Okay, in the last 2 minutes, when the fires, now focus on fires, when the fire is strong enough, all trees burn, but they recover differently from the fire. If you see, for instance, that images on the eucalyptus that Nuno also showed us already is the biggest forest land cover in Portugal. We see that the rebirth of eucalyptus is very strong. And that if you link that with the huge amount of private property in Portugal, you have, let's say, an approach that most of small landowners that have eucalypts on their land, they just, let's say, play the lottery. They put the eucalyptus and they pray if the eucalyptus don't burn. But if they don't burn, okay, they sell it. If they burn, okay, they didn't spend so much time in managing, they do zero more or less management. And so if the eucalyptus burn, they will grow again, and hopefully they'll make some money. So it's a laissez-faire approach to eucalyptus management and the loss of characteristics and character of the landscape that I think we should be very aware of this situation. So we also understood from some studies, one of them Anna referred, that most of the time fire breakers in big fires don't break the fires, but discontinuities help a lot. So we, of course, understand that we need to introduce as much discontinuities, economically viable, a Mediterranean approach situation that we can in order to create a resilient and sustainable concept of landscapes. We can design them, but the difficult thing is to implement the designs. Working together means working everybody, meaning works the administration, landowners, NGOs, universities, all the bodies, the National Institute for Nature Conservation and Forests has a huge role here, the Directorate General of Territory, ministries, local governments. We have to work a lot together, and we have to try to facilitate the administrative implements to achieve what we can technically do, but then we must pass to the places. And so thank you, and I'm finished to continue to deserve a good work. And this is the image. Working together in the fields, sharing knowledge, creating biodiverse and caring landscapes is at least what a landscape architect thinks that he can do, that he can work together with all the other people in situations to create sustainable and resilient landscapes. Thank you, Anna.